Hello everybody, this is Money Mom. Welcome back to the channel. As many of you know, on Monday I'm doing requested videos. Most of them I'm able to do, and this one some of you asked me, because many of you know I'm from Minnesota. I live in Texas now. You want to know what are some differences between living in Minnesota and Texas, so let me get right into it. I was born in 1965. I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. After I went to college, University of Wisconsin, River Falls, and then in 1988, I moved to Dallas, Texas. So basically, I went from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and now I'm in the DFW area of Texas since 1988. So I've lived here a long time. I cannot get rid of this Minnesota accent, though. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a bunch of differences between the two. Now remember, I haven't lived in Minnesota in a long time, and these are from my own personal experience. If some of you have lived in Texas or Minnesota, you may feel differently than I do. But the first one, you're not going to feel differently. It's all about the weather. I taught school in Minnesota and I taught school in Texas. Minnesota has 4 seasons, and the average summer temperature is probably in the 70s. The average winter temperature in the Twin Cities is 17 above zero for a high. If you live in Duluth, it's 11 above zero. Okay, in Texas, your average winter temperature is probably in the 50s, and in the summer, we know how hot it gets here. So basically, the Dallas, Texas is in the top 10 hottest cities. St. Paul, Minnesota is in the top 10 coldest cities. And it's funny because I taught school in Minnesota and I taught in Texas. And in Minnesota, when it was 1 above zero, you could take the kids outside to play. But I think if it was above 94 degrees, you couldn't take them out. I come to Texas, if it was 1 degree below 35, so if it was 34 above zero, I couldn't take them out to play. But if it was 99 degrees out, I could take them out. But if it was above 100, I couldn't. So big difference. And you guys know, Texans and native Texans, many of them don't really like it when it gets cold. 50 degrees is considered cold. The heat doesn't really bother them unless it's for a long period of time. And so that's that. They'll go do outdoor activities when it's over 100. I avoid outdoor activities. I still have not gotten used to this heat. And I've lived here since 1988. I much prefer the cold. So I will say that. Number 2, Minnesota, you have a state income tax. Texas, you don't. Number 3, now this may be just something I've noticed. In Minnesota and all the homes we always had a larger kitchen. The kitchens were larger. And I don't know what it is, but from what I've noticed in Texas, many of the homes have what we call a one-butt kitchen. Small kitchens. I don't know why. It might just be something I've noticed, but the kitchens here tend to be small. That's the one thing I liked about Minnesota. Number 4, Minnesota is a very bike-friendly state. I actually was a bicycle patrol officer in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, and they're all about, you know, following bike safety rules. There's a lot of bike paths there, and so bike riding is huge in Minnesota. Number 5, Minnesota people. I'm going to tell you what I noticed the difference from what I've noticed. They call it Minnesota nice. But in Minnesota and in Texas, everybody's like hi and they greet you and they're very friendly. In Minnesota, good, hardworking people, but you don't generally talk to people you do not know. You hang around the folks that you do know, and you're a good person, but it takes you a while to warm up and get to know people. Now that's how I grew up. Maybe it was because of the family I grew up in. I don't know. But what I noticed in Minnesota is it takes a while for people to warm up and get to know you. They're just not going to randomly make friends with strangers. In Texas, everybody says hi to everybody. Those are the differences that I've noticed. Okay, number 6, basements. That's one of the things I do miss about Minnesota. We don't have basements here. In Minnesota, we did have basements, and I missed that because it really gave you basically a whole second floor of space. Number 7, I say that I grew up in Minnesota. It was the casserole capital and the hot dish casserole capital of the world. We ate tons of hot dishes and casseroles and tapioca and succotash, and those were very popular in Minnesota. People did, and back then when I grew up, you didn't eat spicy food very often. I come to Texas and it's about, I've never had okra before, black-eyed peas, jalapeno, Tex-Mex, all of that was brand new to me. Also in Minnesota, it's because my dad is Hungarian. Basically, except for cereal, you put paprika on everything. But that might have been a Hungarian thing. Okay, number 8, Minnesota. If you grew up there, a lot of times you live there your whole life. And in Texas, you've got people moving in and out, and you've got people from all over the world living here and from many different states. In Minnesota, when I was there, many of the folks were born and raised there, and they stay there. Now, like I said, guys, some of these things I'm sharing may have changed since 1988, and I'm just talking my personal experience. Okay, number 9, I noticed back in Minnesota, there weren't as many restaurants and people didn't go out to eat as much. You ate more at home. Now that might have been the decade. In Texas, we are known in the DFW area. There's tons of restaurants here and many people do go out to eat here. Okay, last but not least, the accent in some of the sayings. In Minnesota, you would hear people saying things like oofda and, you know, oh, they would do that type of thing. And of course, there were all sorts of jokes back then that people would do, but the accent, especially if you were born and raised in Minnesota, especially northern Minnesota, is different. In Texas, if you were born in certain parts, not all parts, you definitely have more of an accent. You say y'all. Not everybody does, but some people that were born and raised here. And I remember when I first moved here, somebody thought I did something funny and they said, "Oh, Dawn, you're such a mess." And I didn't know what that meant. I thought, what? I'm not messy. I had no idea what that meant. So there's definitely different types of terminology people use, a different accent. So these are just some of the things I noticed. I know there's more. And like I said, remember, I'm comparing from late 1980s to now. So there might be a big difference. I think Minnesota and Texas are both fabulous places. Because I'm friendly and I love people, I meet wonderful, fabulous people from all over the world, all the different states. I just happen to just love people. I'm a people person, as you can tell. And so there's a lot of fabulous things about both Texas and Minnesota. But if you don't like cold weather, Minnesota might not be for you. So I'll leave you with that. If you live in Minnesota or Texas, I'd love to know what you've noticed as some differences. That's all for now. This is Money Mom signing off, and as always, I love you. Bye-bye.